Everybody listen up. Draft weekend has come and gone. It was a fun 3 days. We got to see some pretty good talent go to different places. But who better break it down with than McGarvin coming back? It's always good conversations. And before we get started, this is something I didn't mention on air, but there's a podcast clip from your show that I listen to sometimes on Twitter just for a quick laugh, even if it's during the middle of the day.
Okay.
And it's you basically being asked about the chicken noodle soup. You remember
Oh,
that?
I
Yeah.
do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's more than that. It's just you going, the what?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Because it was during that era of like all
yeah.
of those like dances and all that, and every time you learned a new dance, it was like, oh, you gotta learn. Here's a new one, and you're just like, what is happening? So yeah, that was where I drew the line. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing a chicken noodle soup. That's not happening.
Oh, it's all good. But anyway, get into the nitty gritty of it. Like
Oh
we said,
yeah.
draft talk. Um, pick 17. It couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A dream pick. Honestly, I just who would have thought that Christian Gonzalez would have been there? That's the real surprise of it all. I think everyone was kind of banking on the Patriots trading back from 14. Everyone kind of like saw that one coming. I just didn't think that like Christian Gonzalez would be there, and so when they traded back at 14, it was one of those like I had tweeted it that I was like cool with it. I was like I kind of hope they trade down just because they had a cluster of players that I liked,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought in general if you have like 3-4 players that you really like you're cool taking at that spot, then I think you just trade back and kind of let the board decide from there. So instead of picking between Christian Gonzalez and Emmanuel Forbes and Jackson Smith and Jigbo or Zay Flowers, if you have all of those guys right there, and Broderick Jones was still available at the time, so you have
Yep.
all those guys right there, and I'm like, you could take any one of those guys and it'd be like a good pick. So at that point, you can move back about 4 picks, 5 picks, and whoever is the last man standing is the guy you take. So Patriots, traded back 3 spots. Broderick Jones went, Emmanuel Forbes went, and then obviously, they Will
Well,
McDonald went
yeah.
in the middle of there somewhere, and then of course the Patriots took Christian Gonzalez at that point. So, I mean, absolute dream scenario, and the fact that they were able to trade back, pick up a 4th rounder, and then still get the best corner in the draft is, awesome.
Yeah, because I think that once the Steelers probably told them, or Bill Belichick had to have asked, "Hey, who do you want?" And then as soon as you
Yeah.
find out Jones, it's kind of like, "Hey, I get the trade back, I get to fuck with the Jets,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time too, I'm going to get the player that I want a couple picks later." Because say if Gonzalez goes 16th, I'm pretty sure they would have gone like you said, Forbes,
Mm-hmm.
Flowers, Smith and Jigba, one of those guys at 17, which
Yep.
I was perfectly fine
Which
with.
is absolutely okay. Uh huh.
Yeah.
Uh huh.
So they were in a position where it was like, hey, you're in the driver's seat, you're doing good. And at first, like I know I've seen some people like kind of laughing where they're like, oh, hey, I can actually recognize a Patriots first round draft pick. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. But at the same time, too, it's like, look, they get their guy, and this defense now is one where I'm like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
are we gonna win every game like 13-7, or are we gonna like if you thought the Colts Broncos game was bad, guys? 17 games in New England Patriot football could be that all year. We'll wait and see though.
Yeah, I liked going defense at that point. I know that I don't know. I had a contrarian opinion to like so many people I saw on the timeline who just were like, hey, you have to take a wide receiver. But at that point, I just think you take the best player, right? If you're in the first round, I think the worst thing you can do is kind of lock in on a position and say, hey, we want a player at this position. I think that's how you end up taking a N'Keal Harry at 32 when there are better players available. Even though obviously I like the N'Keal Harry pick,
Yeah.
even though it didn't work out. I think at that point, you have Christian Gonzalez is right there. You could take the best corner in the draft potentially because I also like Devin Witherspoon quite a bit. So the first or second best corner in the draft, or you can take a wide receiver. And Jackson Smith and Jigba would have been a fine pick, but at that point, I think Christian Gonzalez is a better corner than Jackson Smith and Jigba is a wide receiver. If that makes sense, if you can compare the two, I
Yeah.
think like the ceiling of someone like Christian Gonzalez, you're looking at like Pro Bowl, All Pro player. So it's like, all right, cool. You take him and then you stick him on your defense and you're good. You no longer have to worry about size. You don't have to worry about having to line up Marcus Jones against T Higgins, and you just know like, all right, we're set at
Yep.
one side. And so I was over the moon with that one.
It's kind of like I remember you and I talked about this in March during free agency, where like Jonathan Jones was getting matched up like against Justin Jefferson, and then he was kind of like getting cooked. Where now, hey, you can put Christian Gonzalez in that spot,
Yep.
and you can let Marcus Jones, you can let Jonathan Jones. you can let those guys, take the wide receiver 2 matchups.
Yep.
Which, that's another thing I want to say. Minnesota, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch at wide receiver they got.
Yeah. I was a lot higher on Jordan Addison than a lot of people. For a long while, he was my my favorite receiver, and then he gave way to after the combine, he gave way to Zay Flowers and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I never ended up picking between the two. It was one or the other. I had them both listed as like my favorite wide receiver, and I'm not picking go to hell. So Minnesota's offense does look a little better there, but yeah, with the Patriots defense, now like, all right, cool. You have Christian Gonzalez on one side, you have Jack Jones or Jonathan Jones, whoever you want to start on the outside, and then you can stick one of the other two Joneses inside the slot. It fixes the math on the defense, which I thought the cornerback group was competitive in the first place, but they were missing that size matchup. And it also allows you to bring Jonathan Jones back into the slot where I think he did his best work. And it allows you to take Miles Bryant off the field.
Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't think he was as bad as I still don't think he's as bad as a lot of other people. I just think he isn't someone who should be a starter. And now he has at least two guys ahead of him in the slot with Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones. So it's a win-win-win.
And then at safety too, you have Duggar, you have Phillips, you even have Jalen Mills in the mix as well. So like when it comes to cornerback, there's not a lack of options. There's not a lack of options. You have many options available, which you need that because guess what? Injuries do happen in football.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and then last year we kind of noticed that once injuries kind of took flight on certain guys, Adrian Phillips was banged up for a good part of the year. You saw the effects. Now, if someone goes down, hey, next man up mentality. And that's where we were talking off air where the Keon White effect comes in. Why?
Oh, yeah.
Look, for as angry as he looked at 44, it's a 46, excuse me.
Yeah.
It was a pick. We talked about this off air. It was a sneaky need for the Patriots.
Yep.
And more than anything of the guys behind him, like we were saying, Anafree Jennings, not him.
Yep.
Ronnie Perkins, I'm still high on him. I really want to see him do well, but I think this year is
play that I like. But just get on the field. I think that's really step one for him because I think the talent is what the talent is. Just get on the field.
And my other thing too with it is, I love Dietrich Wise. I just don't know if last year was a career year, like a peak career year for him, or if he's like gonna stay at that sustained success. Just because, look, Matthew Judon, I trust. I trust Wise, but you know what I mean. Like, is he going to be like that?
Is he going to be as productive a pass rusher as he was last year? I don't think so, but I think he was really good for what he was doing. Obviously, he's a captain, and he plays really well. But I think he overachieved a little bit. I think, obviously, a breakout year in your sixth year is super rare. But I think he and Keon kind of exist together. I don't think it's one or the other. So I think it's just excellent. You add another player there, and Keon White can give you like true pass rush from that opposite edge. Whereas Dietrich Wise was more winning on matchups. I remember that the Ravens game where he had 3 sacks. I mean, he just had a matchup against what was the name? Raymond, the rookie tackle that Baltimore had drafted, and he just couldn't handle the long arms. And I was like, all right, well, what happens when he went up against a passer? I mean, an offensive lineman who could. The production wasn't there. So I think, Dietrich Wise overachieved to a degree, but I still think he's a really valuable member of that offense, that defensive line.
Oh, and I'm not dissing him in any way. I'm just saying,
of course.
We're saying the same thing. And also, too, in case the off chance Dietrich Wise, you listen to this, look, we love you. You're a Patriot. But at the same time, too, like, it's more of like hey, you can also put Dietrich Wise in more of the run game. And then, when it's pass pro.
Yep.
That's where you send Keon and Judon at the quarterback.
Yep, you have Keon, Judon, Uche, and Barmore. That you can have that as your 4, and that is an athletic D line right there. So, really excited about that. I know again, people were really, really upset because at that point the Patriots really needed a corner. Really needed a wide receiver. Which, spoiler alert, they didn't take till way later. If you're using this as your draft guide and you haven't heard of any of the picks, spoiler alert, they didn't take a wide receiver until much, much later. But at that point, everyone was like, we need a wide receiver. And they were like, you know what? Keon White. And I saw it and I was like, I don't know, guys. I kind of really like this pick. He's good. He's someone who could have gone day one. Yeah. And so you get him at pick 46, 14 picks into the second round. I'm sorry. That's another one where you're like, you really can't pass up talent like that. He's too talented a player to pass up and take at that point what would have been the 6th or 7th best wide receiver, because at that point, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, and Quentin Johnston had all already gone. So at that point, you're in the second tier of receivers, and he's up there with the names like Cedric Tillman was available. You had
Hyatt,
Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt. So it's like not guys that you're like, oh yeah, this guy you can draft him and you're going to be set. So it's like at that point you just take a super talented guy.
Yeah, and then the other receiver too that I did like that I don't think was too talked about was Marvin Mims as well. Him going.
Yes. Okay. He went to Denver in the second round, and that was super annoying because I had him as like, all right, cool. He'll be there in the third round, and the Patriots can just trade up in the third round and go get him. It's going to be sick. Yeah. And then you saw the alert come across the screen that Denver traded up, and you're like, damn, I know where we're going with this. So, yeah, that was frustrating, but yeah, I think it at that point. At this point, right, in the draft, when you're in the second round and the board's not falling the way you want it to fall with regards to skill position players, at that point, a bunch of tight ends had already gone. You just take, again, same thing with the Christian Gonzalez pick. You just kind of just take the best player. People always talk about they want, a best player available. You always take the best player available. But in truth, no one wants that because when teams do take the best player, everyone's like, that's not even a need. And you're like, I know, but like you wanted the best player. The Patriots on their first two picks did go best player available. There was like, yeah, this is the best guy here. We're going to take him.
There was one player in particular that I've been pretty high on who went way, way earlier than I thought he was going to. That's Christian Latu going at 101 to the Niners. I thought for sure he'd be a day 4 candidate. And I know we've been talking in this whole time, like, look, receiver need. Look, we'll get to Butte in a little bit. But for everyone clamoring about, they need a tight end, look, the tight end 3 option, look, Scotty Washington's nothing special. But I honestly think that if Hunter Henry has a similar season to what he did last year in the sense of pass catching, obviously, you and I have established this, block him, he's going to be on his butt.
Yeah, you don't need him there.
No, you don't need him there. But I think if he has a solid season this year, I think he's a guy that will probably get a contract extension next offseason.
Sure. In fact, I'm actually not even super sure that he has to play throughout the entire season to get the contract extension. I do think he's kind of someone who could get the extension as early as camp preseason game number 2. Kind of get the extension done and go forward there. I think the Patriots should have taken a tight end. It was just the question then becomes who. And with the way that their picks fell, you weren't really, by the time they could have taken a tight end, the players that were available weren't the kind of players that you're like, yeah, this guy's going to light the world on fire. They were kind of like, okay, well, all the better players are gone, so we could take him, I guess. And I feel like that's kind of how it felt with the wide receivers as well. And again, I don't like the idea of like, hey, we need a wide receiver, so we're going to take a wide receiver. Hey, we need a tight end, we're going to take a tight end. If the guy isn't that good or isn't as good as you need him to be, then don't take him.
I think once the Mayer and Washington ships sailed, I think that's when it was kind of like, okay, let's get realistic. They're probably not going to go. Same thing with the wide receivers. Once day 3 was over, we were going into the day 2 was over, and we were going into the 4th round. There were still people on the timeline who were like, "Oh, they got to go get a receiver," and I'm like, I don't know if y'all have realized, but like, this is a weak wide receiver draft, and we are in round 4. All of the receivers are gone. Like, they're not taking someone here who's gonna, instantly come in and magic pill save the offense. He's gonna come out here and give you 1,100 yards or whatever without some kind of character concerns or without some kind of injury concerns. It's like that ship has kind of sailed. We're in the 4th round. The best option left on the board is A.T. Perry, and you're like, that's like what's that really doing for you? Which do we come back to this then when he burns us in a Saints uniform later?
Oh yeah, most certainly. Him and when Xavier Hutchinson is absolutely lighting it up for the Texans, I'm just gonna look back on it. It's like, yeah, that was dumb.
But with receiver though, look, Keyshawn Butte. Look, we know the character concerns are there, but I said this. It may have been to you or it was to someone else. That I think actually think it was you. I think if they weren't worried about character, they wouldn't have taken him. I know people were concerned about it, but I think the fact that, like, even to how they went out and signed Juju Smith-Schuster, which I know, look, there's a lot of the off-field stuff.
Yeah.
Antonio Brown's a different story because, look, he lied and we didn't know the truth until like a week and a half after or like a few days after that Miami game. Yeah. But with Butte, I'm not saying wide receiver 1, but like I don't think you could be mad at this wide receiver room going into
camp. Sure.
Yeah.
After camp, if you want to be upset with it, then by all means go. But going in, I think it's a fine room. I think so. The thing with Butte is like he's he's so uber talented. There was the whole rumor of the whole orgy thing, which we don't really have to get into.
Choo choo.
Right. The funniest thing someone said was like, "Oh man, we just took a receiver who went last in the train," and I'm like, "Yikes!" That was pretty good. But if he's locked in, you see the talent. He's an uber talented player. Even as early as the start of this year, prior to the draft, obviously, people had him as like a number one pick, right? A first round pick, and then from there started slipping like, oh, maybe he'll be a second round pick, and then the whole dismissal from LSU thing came in, and the whole the choo choo experience happened, and
then like the whole I'm coming back to LSU, and then I'm
immediately
going to the draft because the train came out.
Yeah. So
it was messy.
But as far as like the talent, I don't think you can argue with the talent, and I think that's kind of the right kind of pick for the Patriots at this point, because like I said, you weren't going to get an instant impact kind of like year one. He's going to come in and light the world on fire wide receiver at that point in the draft anyway. So the guy you're taking is going to have an asterisk no matter what. It's like, oh, he's either too small, too slow, went last in the train, or whatever the case is. You're going to have someone who's a little sussy, but it's a 6th round pick. You know what I mean? Like the absolute worst thing that's going to happen is he's going to not work out here, and he's going to end up on that long ass list of day 3 receivers who didn't work out for the Patriots. Sue me. I'll take that. So I think he's the kind of player that will be talked about as a steal, and I think that's going to last throughout the entire offseason until the games start, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, because it's like one of those things going into camp. How you look at it, okay, Juju. I still put Kendrick Bourne as wide receiver 2. Look, we know if they play him right, he can be good. I think you put Tyquan in your slot, and then you have probably from there Butte, and then we'll see if Trey Nixon can get into the lineup at all.
I think it's Parker.
Or my bad, I completely forgot about Devontae
Parker. Everyone forgets about Parker.
Yeah, my bad. So, which I could still see him being like a June trade candidate potentially.
Sure. I just think no one else can do what he does as far as like being big. They just don't have as many big receivers. So I think he's probably going to be around, but I'm wondering how much he plays. I think it's him and Tyquan for that X spot. Juju. Probably big slot kind of Z, and then Kendrick Bourne, same kind of thing. I have Butte as one of the wide receivers as well. And then I'm curious as to who takes that last wide receiver spot. It could be Demario Douglas, the other wide receiver they took from Liberty. I thought he was more of just a gadget player, but a lot of people smarter than me seem to think like he can develop into a slot. So I guess we'll see.
That also was a pure Belichick thing. As soon as I saw East West Shrine, I'm like, yeah, that's a Belichick pick.
Yeah, most certainly. In fact, I'm actually surprised they didn't take more Shrine Bowl players.
Yeah, but at the same time too, like, look, the fact that they took a punter who wears rec specs and they took a kicker whose favorite line was about kicking in the cold. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, you don't draft a punter, you don't draft a kicker. I'm like, guys, those were needs. Look, I thought Michael Turk was going to be the punter, the kid from Oklahoma, just because that's another East West Shrine guy. But at the same time, too, it's, I know you always fantasy football in the draft or whatever. Oh, you can get those guys later on or whatever. Like, Gostkowski undrafted, Tucker undrafted. But if the need's there and you want the guy, just go get him.
Yeah. I don't buy into the idea that you don't draft a kicker. I think all of the I think everyone thinks you can just pick up a kicker off the scrap heap and just make it happen. But I think that's an unrealistic. It's just not really a realistic idea. Just because we see what happens when teams lose kickers, teams with established kickers, they lose kickers, and then they're just like churning through just randoms, just bringing in random dudes like left and right, and they're getting cut and moved and all that. And it's just because it's really not that easy. Same thing kind of applies to a punter, right? The Patriots had, Jake Bailey, who they did draft. And once he started to, decline, he got hurt and then ended up on IR. They brought in, Michael Pilardi. And he was awful. He was absolutely terrible. So it's just like, you can't just find them anywhere. Like if it were that easy, teams would have better punters, but I think punting as a whole in the league isn't fantastic, and it's because punters just aren't that easy to find. So if you have one that you feel like, hey, this can be our punter for the next 7-8 years, I mean, draft because like what else are you doing with the picks, right? You take the punter this took was Bryce Behringer, 6th round out of Michigan State, right?
Yep.
Who else are you taking in the 6th round at pick 192? Who's going to move the needle? Like you're probably taking you're probably taking a linebacker who's going to end up on the practice squad. So I don't see why it's like, oh, you don't draft one, You absolutely draft one. As far as taking one in the 4th, I don't know, man. Like, I think by then the Patriots were kind of just over the draft with regards to like their players. I think once you start taking specialists, you're kind of telling us like, hey, all the impact players are gone. We're just taking, traits at this point. We're taking darts. We're throwing darts, like guys who might be able to play, and you go from there. So I don't really mind that. And I think had San Francisco not taken Jake Moody, pick number 99. Yeah. I don't think Chad Ryland goes in the 4th. He went, the kicker out of Maryland. He went pick 112. I don't think that happens if Moody doesn't go 99. And it's mostly just because at that point, he's the only other kicker in the draft, right? Like, it was a 2-kicker draft. It was Moody and it was Chad Ryland. Those are the 2 top kickers.
Shout out to Big Ten.
Right. And you had Green Bay who had a need at kicker. So the Patriots decided to trade up and they took a kicker because then you see what, the ripple effect down the line. Green Bay drafted a kicker in the 6th round who has a 72%, field goal percentage. That is abysmal, and that's a guy you drafted because there was no one else. So as far as you don't draft a kicker, I'm like, you draft kickers. I'm sorry, you do. The idea of just you're going to find one undrafted and just make it happen isn't realistic. And no one cares about a kicker until you need a kicker. Like until your guy is missing a 42-yarder, then all of a sudden you're like, this guy sucks. Get a better kicker, and you're like, yeah, should have drafted one.
Yeah, because that's just the thing, like where you're saying, like it happens. I don't know how much of a fantasy footballer you are, but
back in the day, I used to do it. Haven't in the last 4 years.
But so when it comes to drafting, how like for example, tight end, one person will take like an elite tight end, like a Travis Kelce will go, and then you see a run of tight ends go, and then if you don't capitalize, that's when you end up with a shitty. You're
going to end up playing Ryan Izzo at your tight end spot, yeah.
Exactly. So it's the same sort of logic here with the kickers, where it's like, look, do you want Ryland or do you want the guy that's a 72% accuracy rating?
Exactly. So you make it happen with what you have. I understand though, people don't value special teams enough, but that's really not realistic to how the league works. The league has shown us many a times through many years at this point that they highly value special teamers. Kickers get drafted, punters get drafted, hell, long snappers get drafted. Guys are taking just pure specialists. I know Patriots fans love to pretend like it's only the Patriots who do this. Like no one else takes special teamers, and I'm like, everyone else takes special teamers. Like it absolutely happens because it doesn't matter in Madden and it doesn't matter in fantasy football, but like in real football, when you have a bad special teams unit, it shows, as you saw with the Patriots. I mean, 3 kick return touchdowns, unacceptable. Yeah. Unacceptable. So yeah, they're gonna take a few special teams only players, and you're gonna have to just be okay with it.
Yeah, it's because it's one of those things too, where it's like right now it's like, oh man, why do we do that? But in the long run, you're gonna look at it and go, hey, it was a smart thing. Like the investment doesn't look good in the short term, but in the long term, you're gonna be thankful for it.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to put you on the spot like this, but I want to play not a quick game, but a game with the first round as a whole.
Sure.
Basically, I'll read you off the pick.
Yeah.
And you give me a buzzword or a quick explanation of what you thought of it.
Sure.
Bryce Young.
Loved it. Best player in the draft, should have gone number 1 overall, and he did go number 1 overall. They didn't overthink it.
CJ Stroud.
Like it a lot. I'm curious to see how it works out for him in Houston, because I don't think Houston has been great at developing quarterbacks, but I don't buy into the whole, he went to Ohio State, you can't draft them. They're, Ohio State quarterbacks are terrible. I think he's a good player. He's fundamentally sound and he's super accurate. I think that translates to the league.
Will Anderson.
Love Will Anderson. That was exciting. I thought he was going to go number 2, but I understand why he went 3. He is going to be a great edge for Houston for a very long time. Plays the run well, pass rushes well. What more can you ask for?
My only thing is, and you said this back in March, I remember, teams who are usually picking in the top 10 now will be in the top 10 next year. So we'll see what ends up happening with them. If it's like in the short term, decision might look bad, but in the long term, if those guys develop and Will Anderson's a true leader and alpha male in this defense, people are going to forget about it.
Right. It only matters if you're bad for beyond that next year. So I think next year they may still end up being like picking around 10th or 11th. Well, I guess Arizona will because they have the pick. But I think if you're still bad the year after that, then you can scrutinize the pick. But I think give it a year.
Yep. Wait till 2020. I'm going to wait till 25 to make judgment on that going into the draft.
Yep.
Anthony Richardson.
Okay, like the talent, I just think I wish he went somewhere else. Indianapolis doesn't have anything else in that quarterback room. I think he's a player who just needs a year and a half of development. He's only 20 years old. He's only started, I think, 13 games in his college
Yep,
career.
13.
That is alarming. And then to go to the Colts and then have to be the savior behind a really rickety offensive line. The skill players, I know a lot of people really like them. They really don't impress me much. People love Alec Pierce. He's just fine. I don't love Josh Downs. They drafted him. I don't love him. Michael Pittman's pretty good though, so that's cool. And then their tight end situation, I don't love either. You have Mo Alley Cox. He's fine. Yeah.
He's the word is mid that I like to use for him. And then Jonathan Taylor, I want to see if he bounces back or not because he didn't have the best 2022.
Yep.
My word for Anthony Richardson is high risk, high reward.
Yes. If he hits, they're gonna look like fucking geniuses. If not, that's rough. That's rough.
Devin Witherspoon.
Love Devin Witherspoon. One of my, like I said earlier, either my favorite corner or my second favorite corner, depending on the day. I think he has that dog attitude. He plays pissed off, and he plays like he's offended that the receiver has lined up across from him, and that is just the kind of swagger I think. Like, all right, cool, you stick that'll play anywhere. So I think Seattle got a good one.
Okay, Paris Johnson Jr.
Love best tackle in the draft. I don't know that it was necessarily close. Absolute stud.
Big. It's also a big need for Arizona because look, you're not going to run Will Hernandez back out as tackle because we all know. Look, that offensive line's bad.
Yep.
But I do like, actually, by the way, I know everyone's gushing about a certain bird in this draft, which we'll talk about, but Arizona,
they had a good draft. Yeah,
they had a good draft. I agree. Like, you could tell like this wasn't a Steve Keim draft. You could tell.
Yes,
it was someone new.
I think their draft picks weren't really all that flashy, but I think they hit on a couple of they picked up a couple of high potential players. I really like they took the wide receiver Michael Wilson in the third round. He is someone who didn't play a lot in college because he was just hurt all the time, but the talent is undeniable. So if they hit on that, that's gonna be incredible.
Yep. I'm gonna go first on this one, and I'm gonna say Tyree Wilson, and I'm gonna say I think the Vegas Raiders are trying to be what the 22 Patriots were in the sense of your offense is kind of, but you're just gonna depend on your defense to win football games. I
like it because I think I think that pass rush is going to be very dangerous. Obviously, you have Max Crosby there, and Chandler Jones is still there until you add Tyree Wilson. I think the injury thing kind of worries me, that the injury concern there, but it's fine.
Yeah. And then Bijan Robinson.
Love Bijan Robinson. He is special. I think it is okay that he went as high as he did. People will keep telling you don't draft running backs, but if he's a special player, you take a special player. I'm
going to say this right now. I feel like Atlanta at first, I was always judging them on like, how are you going to do? But I feel like Atlanta's going to be one of those teams that like sneaks up on people where you like, they do a little bit better than people expect. I'm not saying they'll make the playoffs, but.
No, I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I think they will compete. And that's all you can really ask for.
And I'm going to say this for NFC South. I'm going to say 6 to 7 win team. I think they'll steal a couple of games and win a couple they're not supposed to.
Sure. I think they'll be in it well into December.
Yes. And this pick is my personal favorite of the first round besides Gonzalez, but Jalen Carter, number 9.
I like it. I just wish it wasn't to Philly because my goodness, what the hell? They just 2 drafts in a row where they just had an elite lineman just like fall. And I'm like, sick, because they got Jordan Davis last year, they got Jalen Carter this year, and I'm like, great.
That's not even, like, my opinion, the best pick. I think one of their best picks was getting Keely Ringo at the start of the fourth round.
Yes, in the 4th round. And I said that if he was still there, if I were the Patriots, I would have just taken him and figured it out later. He's too good a player to still be sitting around there at pick where'd he go? 103, 104? So
yeah, 103, 104, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so at that point you're like, he's too good, take it. They had an excellent draft.
That they did. Darnell Wright.
I thought he went too early. I liked him. Top 10 is that's early. That is early.
Kyrie got me on him to come to us at the pick 14, which if we took him at 14, I wouldn't have been mad about or even there, but I feel like I just don't get the Bears why you forego Jalen Carter to get right. But at the same time, too, they need the offensive line as well.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to missing on Mike McGlinchey.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I thought 10 was a little soon for him, but he's a good player.
And then Skoronski at 11, I don't mind. I think that was the right spot for him to go. But I
Yeah,
think he was one of those guys. Sorry to cut you off, but I think he's one of those guys that was a little over, like not to the extent of Will Levis, which we'll obviously saw happen, but he was a little overvalued, I think, going into the draft.
I agree. I think he's kind of a he's more Quentin Nelson than he is Zach Martin. I know people like to compliment Zach Martin, like, oh, he's going to be like a Hall of Fame guard. I think he'll be very, very good for a while, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah. And then the next one I'm going to go with, because I know you had the famous Mr. Burns gift tweet about him, Jahmyr Gibbs. All I'm going to say about this,
Yeah.
this was way too early. This was way too early.
Yeah, I really like Jahmyr Gibbs in like the late 20s or the top of the second round. 12 is absurd. I don't know if you've heard the rumblings, but apparently Detroit took him as high as they did because they thought the Patriots would take him at 14.
Which I don't know if I would have liked them at 14. If he was like,
I don't think he was in play at 14. That doesn't feel realistic.
if he was falling and he was in the mid to late 30s, that's when I think you pounce like and you do the
Absolutely.
barn.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You trade up, you go get him there. 12? Man, you're asking a lot.
And then I don't know how to feel about the running back room. Look, I know the rich get richer with Swift to Philly. I love that move.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I don't know how a backfield of I feel like their backfield's downgraded with Montgomery and Gibbs from Williams and Swift.
I'm just not big on David Montgomery, so I completely agree. And I'm also super big on
Swift?
pardon, it's
Williams.
yeah, Jamal Williams, pardon. Yeah, I was super big on him. I think they should have just kept him instead of allowing him to go. So I don't know. I really don't think that running back room got that much better. I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot, but I really don't like David Montgomery. So
Yeah, I like David Montgomery as a running back too, but I don't like him as a running back one.
sure, yeah. So I don't know. 12 is just way too early, and that also between that and then their next pick, which I'm sure you'll get to. I don't know. I was down on the Lions after day one.
I think the Lions are that team that everyone's kind of expecting to take the next step, but I feel like
Yes, I feel like they overachieved a little bit last year, and they're going to come back down to earth just a little bit.
I still feel like they'll be competitive, but they're going to be that team that, say, if they start 1-2, everyone's going to be like, guys, what the fuck?
Yep. I think everyone's kind of expecting them to just be like, oh yeah, they're going to win 10 games. I think what they win last year, 9 games.
Yeah.
I think this year they'll probably win about 8 or 9 games, and they're not going to. I don't think they'll fall that far back. I just don't think they're. I don't think they're as good as how they ended the year last year. If that makes sense.
That makes complete sense to me. And then Lucas Van Ness. I don't know if there's a bigger highlight: him getting drafted or the father slapping that girl in the ass. What was the bigger highlight from that?
Wait, what? I missed that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. But apparently,
Okay.
basically, I think it was his dad. His dad, excuse me, was like smacking some girl in the bum after he got drafted or something like that. And even how there was like the random kid who came in and hugged him, and it was just like, get the fuck away from him.
Oh, I love it. I really liked Lucas Van Ness. I was leading into the draft when there was the whispers that the Patriots would have taken Lucas Van Ness at 14. That was like who they liked at 14. I know the internet was like throwing up, but I liked it. I think he's a very good player. I think he's incredibly underrated, and I'm not sure why people are talking about him like he's Jadeveon Clowney, like, oh, he can only play the run, he can't rush the passer. He's a good player. They got a good one.
Yeah, it'll help their defense because that's something that's always been lacking. We all know it because especially with the Aaron Rodgers stuff where it's just like, look, Rodgers is only one with an elite defense. Does Van Ness make them elite? I don't know, but it's a good addition.
I think he's just a good passer. I don't think he's any worse than Preston Smith, who's their edge over there right now. So I think at worst you got a younger version, someone with more upside to just come in and compete against him. So I like the pick a lot.
And then Broderick Jones.
I liked Broderick Jones. I didn't like him for the Patriots. The 19 starts thing, I'm just like, the Patriots just aren't going to take him there. Good for the Steelers. I do question their ability to develop linemen. I think
Kendrick Green hasn't turned into anything special.
Yeah, we kind of talk about them like, oh, they're just not taking good linemen. I think they're taking fine linemen. I just don't think they're developing them very well.
Yeah, the Steelers are such a weird team. Like, they're going to be competitive, but they're going to be mid at the same time.
Yeah, and they're going to finish with, one win over 500 because that's just how they operate.
Yeah. And then Will McDonald, like we said, I think this was just a panic pick by the Jets.
Yes, that felt too early. I think he's a good player, and I liked him in round 2. I think I mean, just it's absurd to have taken him at 15.
And then Emmanuel Forbes, he's someone I did want for the Patriots, but I like the fit in Washington. I think they really prioritize defense in this draft.
Yeah, I like Forbes as well. I think he's the kind of corner. I don't think he's as technically sound as Christian Gonzalez. What I think he brings to the table, though, is he will turn the ball over.
He will
he will get you those turnovers, and he will make something happen with it. But with those kind of players, though, obviously there are going to be some times he's going to, go for the ball. He's going to miss it, and he's going to give up a huge play. But I like those players anyway. I think J.C. Jackson was like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. You had Marcus Peters was like that. Right now, Trayvon Diggs, who is a really good corner, and I know people think he's so overrated. He's kind of like that, where he's going to give you a splash play. He's also going to give up, a 75-yard touchdown to Kendrick Bourne. That's going to happen. So
yeah, that's the thing. And then obviously we got to Christian Gonzalez earlier. I don't know if we can talk about it again if we want to.
He is awesome, and I'm happy he's here.
Number 0, baby.
Oh yeah.
And then I don't know if you know this or not, but there's also a goaltender with the exact same name, but Jack Campbell. This was another way too early pick for me.
I despise that. That is I straight up hated that pick. When they said Jack Campbell, I laughed out loud. I was like, this is insane.
Mike Renner, formerly of Pro Football Focus, because they've laid off so many people lately, it's crazy, said this. Basically, the Detroit Lions went to a steakhouse and ordered a hamburger.
That is a really good comparison. Yeah, I think you know what it is. What my issue with him is he is an off-ball linebacker, and I think they're the running backs of defense where you probably shouldn't take one on day one unless he is special. And Jack Campbell doesn't do anything special. He's a good player, and would have been a great player in day 2. I would have been like, oh yeah, great. I mean, good for Detroit for getting him when they did, but at 18, you're asking a lot. He is not particularly great in coverage. He's not a sudden athlete. He doesn't have like super good range. I don't see that one.
You got Malcolm Rodriguez in the 6th round last year, and they're very similar style of off-ball linebacker.
I think they're going to make a good combination. Taking him at 18 is just.
You know what? Campbell and Rodriguez, they're going to do this. They're going to have those plays where they just fucking truck someone, or they're going to have those running plays where they just get burnt by a tight end or running back.
The ball and just, not even a factor in it. Yeah, I agree. I think, man, I really that was my least favorite pick of the first round. I did not like that at all.
And then this pick I kind of liked for the sense of, like, look, it is a position need, and that's Kalijah Cansey going to Tampa. I just like it because Nunes Roches, which I always thought was an underrated free agency signing, went to the Giants this offseason.
I like Kalijah Cansey. I think the worst thing that's going to happen to him is everyone's going to expect him to be Aaron Donald, and he is not that. No. He is not stout against the run because Aaron Donald can at least defend the run. But I think he's a really good interior rusher, so good for them. Don't love it, don't hate it. So
yeah. And then, obviously, JSN going to Seattle. Look,
love it. Love it. I mean, the math on their offense.
Three-headed monster at receiver.
Yeah. Tyler Lockett. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then you obviously have DK on the outside. I think that is good. They did it really well.
Yeah, and then obviously, look, before we get to the next pick, I want to send another quick update just because you keep getting them, but just want to send another. I did this last time. I'll do this again just to give another quick, just a little shout out to Doug Hyde, who's going through a lot right now with his family, and we're just
absolutely
thinking about him and hoping for the best for him because, look, that's something no one should have to go through.
Completely agree.
Yeah. In which the GoFundMe, I believe, is already over $80,000 as well. Which is
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. And then Quentin Johnston to LA. This fit I really like.
I like it. I just don't really understand what they're cooking over in LA. You have Josh Palmer. You have obviously Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and then you add Quentin Johnston, and I'm just like, okay, but like, these you have 3 guys who I feel like are so similar. That I was like, all right, cool. But it's fine.
I feel like it's just like going to the cart where it's like, okay, we go to the wide receiver line. Okay, we have him. He's average height. Okay, we have him. He's a little bit taller than Mike Williams. We want the really tall guy to catch.
Give us a jumbo receiver. Bring him in. Yeah, I don't mind it at all. I just I think their defense is atrocious though, so I don't really understand going wide receiver again if you just have absolutely nothing worth talking about on defense. But I think it's just crazy to have a defense where you have Khalil Mack, you have Joey Bosa and you have Derwin James, and the defense is still not very good.
And one thing I want to say with them is Drew Tranquil is a sneaky loss that they experienced this
Mm-hmm.
offseason.
Completely agree. He was an underrated player.
And he's in Kansas City now.
Yep. So they'll see him, and he signed for really good money there, for really small money there. So that's just I don't really know what they're doing over there.
I think that was his ring chaser money that he signed. Like, hey, let's go win a chip.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe he wouldn't have taken that for LA. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And then Zay Flowers going to Baltimore, where the highlight of this for me was his Key and Peele impression when he walked into the facility on Friday. This might be another video I sent
I
you.
haven't seen it. No.
Basically, you know the Key and Peele Barack Obama sketch?
Yeah.
Where he's like, every black person's like, oh, what's up? And then the white person, nice to meet you.
I said,
literally did that.
Oh no, I gotta see it. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Zay Flowers to Baltimore. I like it for like Lamar. I like that. Obviously they went out there and got him a nice weapon. I'm worried because for whatever reason, Baltimore is the place that receivers go to die. Like they go there and they just don't do what they should be doing. Like Rashad Bateman should be an elite player.
He's been quiet since
and
he got
he's
drafted.
Just nothing going on. I'm just like, I don't know. They had Hollywood Brown, and
they just didn't use him right.
Yeah, and obviously they're transitioning out of a run first offense, so we'll see. I don't know. I'd be more excited if Baltimore just didn't have a history of like just sucking the life out of receivers.
I did send you the video, by the way, while you were talking. So if you can view it after, if you want, you can view it whenever. One thing I want to get into quickly, just because we brought up Rashad Bateman, is actually never mind. We'll get into it when his team picks next. And then Jordan Addison, like we talked about before, that's great. I think there's a potential for him to leapfrog KJ Osborne for wide receiver too.
I agree, and that is disappointing because I really like KJ Osborne. So, but maybe he'll request a trade and they'll send him to New England. That'll pipe dream. That's my pipe dream. Send him here.
Hey, can only be one thing but hopeful. And then the next thing I was going to get into, because this ties into Minnesota. I know the New York Giants, took Deonte Banks in the first round.
Yes.
I really like their second round pick with John Michael Schmidt. I really like that pick.
Yeah, that was they had a
really good draft.
Yeah, they had I liked what they were doing. I think Deonte Banks is my favorite corner who wasn't Christian Gonzalez or Devin Witherspoon. I think he is a phenomenal player. He is a really good man cover corner. He's built really well. He runs really fast. He is so good. So good for the Giants for just getting them one.
Yeah, because with the Giants they had Banks, good pick. Schmitz, look, they need a center. That's something I've been begging for years. Jalen Hyatt, I really liked. And then,
I didn't love him as much, but I can understand why they would why they take him and what they're hoping to do with him. And if it works, it's gonna look great for them. So
that's the thing. That's why I like it, because it's one of those things where it's like, hey, it's filling a team need. Like he may not be like on the top of everyone's radar, but if he helps fill the Giants' needs, I feel like their fan base will be happy. And then I'm blanking on the guy, but they took the Oklahoma running back, which I feel like is I know right away. I think not Eric Gay. What's the kid's name? Let's see if I can find this quickly as I scroll through it here.
So they took Eric Gray in the 5th round.
That's who it is, Eric Gray.
And then they took Trey Hawkins in the 6th.
I liked Eric Gray just because you need a running back too behind Saquon. You need someone
someone you can just give the ball to and be all right. Yeah.
Yes, and for this next player, I want to go first because I saw this comparison on Twitter and I laughed at it, and that's Dalton Kincaid, and someone compared him to a less murdery Aaron Hernandez.
I like Dalton Kincaid. I thought he's a really good player, and I'm bummed out that he's a Bill because he is just going to kill the Patriots in one game.
Yeah,
you just know it 2 years. Like, yeah, he's just gonna just murder them. It's gonna be like, yep, we deserve this.
I feel like in a sense too that he has potential to be better than Dawson Knox. I don't know if that'll be
I
true
completely agree. I agree. I think his ceiling is much higher. But I also think Dawson Knox is a better player than Bills fans think he is. For whatever reason, like at the end of every year, they're like, "Oh, fucking Dawson Knox." And I'm like, I like Dawson Knox. Like he's a good player, but I don't know. The Bills fans on my timeline just don't seem to like him nearly as much as I do. So I don't know.
I think it's just because last year he signed his contract and then he was basically put on a milk carton until December, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, you're not always in control of that, and they had a weird year anyway. So I don't know. Dawson Knox is a good player.
And then Mozzie Smith. This is just a weird one.
I liked Mozzie Smith. I didn't expect him to go to Dallas, but
That's why I call it weird.
Yeah, he's a really good run defender though. Like that is just, and I know he doesn't offer nearly anything as a pass rusher, but 2 downs, like he's just gonna stick him in the middle there. You're gonna be all right. You're gonna be all right. I like that one.
Yeah, and then the other one that I liked was Anton Harrison to the Jags, just because this is a perfect team fit.
Yes,
more than anything.
They needed a tackle after the suspension. The suspension news came down on Cam Robinson. I thought he would be there in the second. I was hopeful, and then they took it away from me. So,
yeah, and then Miles Murphy to the Bengals. Look, I think you're beefing up your pass rush.
I agree. We'll see how it shakes out, but I think that Cincinnati's pass rush is a little underrated. They have Joseph Asai. They have
Trey Hendrickson,
and Sam Hubbard. That's a good pass rushing trio there, and then you add Miles Murphy. I don't know. I think they're gonna make some noise. Obviously, the Bengals are gonna compete for the division and should be the favorites to win it. But I think that pass rush is going to be something by the middle of November where like, oh yeah, that's a good pass rush.
They also have one player on their defense that I'm really a fan of, and that's Logan Wilson, the linebacker.
I like Logan Wilson. The player on their defense that I'm a fan of is Chidobe Awuzie, who's coming off an ACL. Love him.
I just love him because like every time I swear I watch a Dallas Cowboy game, his name was always getting called by Joe Buck.
Yep. Yeah.
And you want that.
He is a good player. I know Cowboys fans just didn't really like him very much. They're like, oh, he's I always thought he was kind of miscast there though. He was playing a lot of zone. I think he's a better man corner than he is his own corner. And I think the minute he got to Cincinnati, everyone's like, oh, wait a minute, this guy can play. So I love Chidobe Awuzie, and I hope he comes back stronger than ever.
And then Brian Brees.
I have no opinion on that. I think that New Orleans just keep taking D linemen and they just like fall into the black hole. Like they take one every year in the first round and nothing. It's always at the end of the year. You're like, yep, it's Cam Jordan and absolutely no one. Yet Peyton Turner, they took a couple of years ago. He has done absolutely nothing. They had Marcus Davenport, who they had traded up for. He did absolutely nothing. Now he's in Minnesota. I don't know. I should be more excited about it, but they just don't do anything over there.
They also had David Onyemata as well, who I like, Canadian.
And he was, yep.
And now he's in Atlanta.
Yep. And that's a good pickup for them.
And then they also lost Shy Tuttle. So I think more than anything, too, this was a true position filler.
We just needed a D tackle. Let's go ahead and get one.
Yep. And then Nolan Smith, like, look, the rich get richer.
Yeah, I didn't love Nolan Smith. I just don't really know where he plays because I don't think he's that good a pass rusher to just line up on the edge the whole time. So I didn't think he'd fit here, and I think he's a little small to play linebacker for the Patriots. But the minute he went to the Eagles, I'm just like, yeah, they're set. Like that is just an elite player for them because they're fine with smaller linebackers playing in that second level.
And then Felix and I'm gonna butcher this. Felix and Duque Uzama.
Yes, the pass rusher. He's a little raw, but I think the talent is there. I don't think he's a good football player, not a good pass rusher yet. I think he will be. So
they did the same thing last year too. Like they took George Karlaftis, who I was high on coming out. I liked him for there because he actually had a pretty good rookie year. But you know what? Less about the first round picks now. Because I know we talked Patriots receiver earlier, but in his rookie year, how many yards is Malik Cunningham gonna catch?
Okay, so is he playing receiver? If he's playing receiver, I mean, we'll see. I like that signing a lot because I think he'll stick on the roster regardless. Regardless of if he's playing receiver or if he's playing quarterback, because the Patriots have needs at both spots. They need another quarterback. You're not going into camp with just Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones. I know they signed Trace McSorley, but like let's be real. So I like that a lot. We'll see. I think he could be fun. He's a really good athlete. I just think it'll take him a little bit of time to convert to receiver and make that transition fully. Because we saw, Derek King was supposed to make that transition last year.
Yes.
And he just couldn't. So, and now he's playing quarterback in the XFL for the DC Defenders, who are going to the championship next weekend. So we'll see.
Who ended up winning out of the West
the Arlington Renegades ended up with the upset. They beat the Houston Roughnecks. Yeah. So
Ooh, so Arlington versus
DC, they should get absolutely destroyed, but we'll see.
DC getting destroyed. Oh, we love it. But and you know what? Now is like the fun time of year to be a football fan because look, more than minicamp, because I feel like minicamp is just you just there to see the players work out and be like, hey, you're gonna throw the ball, but then it's just like, okay, now let's throw the ball with pads on. And that's
Yep.
where it's like training camp is fun. But my fun event is next Thursday, and that's scheduled release day. Why? Because we circle each and every single date on the calendar. So I want to ask you a question. If you're making the schedule, who do you have the Patriots open up against week one, home or road? And
I have them
time
on
slot?
the road, 4 o'clock against the Jets. I think that is just money. Money.
I know you and I talked about this where I'm just like the Jets are gonna be like on Thursday night football, then they're gonna be on Monday night football, and then they're
Yeah.
gonna be on like a 4:25 spot where I want to be like
Yep.
NFL. You don't have to shove them down our throats or force feed
But they
it to us.
will. But they
They will.
will. They are suckers. They do it every year. They're, oh, someone moved. We're just gonna they're gonna be so good. And I really don't think the Jets are gonna be that good. Because I don't buy into the idea that their only problem was quarterback, and everyone seems to be talking like their only problem was quarterback. Also, they got rid of Elijah Moore, and I also don't like the Jets, so fuck the Jets. So, but I would like to see them open on the road against the Jets because I feel like the schedule makers are going to want the Jets at home to open up the year because of the whole Aaron Rodgers thing. I know they're going to want them in a time slot that isn't 1 o'clock. So, and I don't think they're bold enough to put them on Sunday Night Football. So I think it'll be a 4 o'clock game, and then you think of which matchup would give you a lot of sauce, but not too much, right? Because you want to open with a matchup that's really good, but you don't want to blow your best matchup in week one. It's just week one.
Yeah.
Patriots. Nice division matchup. It just feels right.
I completely agree with you just because it's like, look, you have this good matchup. You have it. Because if you throw Jets and Bills out there right away and say if the Bills go in there and just cook them,
then you're starting off the season on a bad foot, and now everyone's looking at the primetime slate and seeing the Jets 4 more times and going, oh my God, I can't believe this. So you want them to get a game that is quote unquote winnable. So I think you open with a division rival.
Yeah, and then my big thing with the Jets is, look, I just think they're going to be that team that's overhyped, a team I compare them to at the moment until I see it. You remember the Browns in 2019?
I do remember the Browns in 2019, yeah.
And they got cooked by Tennessee week 1, and right away everyone was just like, we were dead wrong about
Browns.
these boys.
Yeah, I do remember that. That's a fun comparison. I think that's a good one.
I think that could be one, and I also think another one too could be the Detroit Lions in that sense, where because everyone's starting to say division winner, this. I'm like, guys, I still have the Vikings winning that division personally.
I agree,
and I think that Green Bay's not a team to be slept on. I think it's just up to love on how good they are.
Right. I think that defense is better than people are giving them credit for.
They're going to be that team that win a lot of ugly football games.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with winning ugly football games. You don't want to lose ugly football games, but if you win ugly football games, you're doing all right.
And then the Bears I think the Bears are an X factor in the sense of like they're going to be better than last year. I don't see them as getting worse.
Yeah, I just don't know how much better.
That's the thing.
I don't know that roster is that much better than it was last year. They had a really solid draft with regards to just getting players like they needed. Like they just got better. But I really don't know how much better they are than last year. I still have them behind the Lions and behind the Vikings. So,
yeah, and for me, I still have them in 4th as well. But I feel like will the car drive 50 miles? Or will the car drive 500 miles? You know, it's one of those things where it's like same old Bears because I think this. For as much as I don't like this happening, this could really be a 2-year firing if things don't go to plan and they look horrible again. I think Poles can be safe, but I think Matt Eberflus could be gone.
I would agree with that. And for a while there at the start of last year, it did feel like he was going to be gone because they were playing some ugly football.
And they decided to kick our ass out of nowhere.
Yes, and then they beat the shit out of us, and it was like, all right, cool. And then just
Like that game like I'm going to rant. Like, look, I know people like you and I spoke literally right after Vegas. That game bothered me more than anything because it started the whole, who's a quarterback when we were all like, okay, we know what's going on. And then the fact that it's just like we're getting burnt by Equanimous, St. Brown, and Dante Pettis. I was just like, what are we doing here? This isn't Mac's fault. This is a collective shitty team effort.
Yep. Yeah, and then Justin Fields just running all over everyone, and you're like, yeah, this is terrible. And then somehow making it about the quarterbacks, I was like, all right, fun. Yeah. Fun.
And then the only other thing I'll say is because 2 weeks earlier I got to see them play in what was their best home game of the season against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
And then, what was I going to say? And as I look at my mural for my trip to Boston, the only thing I wish for, and I feel like it's going to come back this year, is the Patriot red uniforms.
Absolutely. I think they'll probably do it 3 times this year.
One uniform matchup that we have this year that I would love to see, but I feel like it would just look really weird, is us and our Reds against Philly in their Kelly Green.
That would be amazing. It's not going to happen because
No.
the world hates us, but that would be amazing. That would be also. You know what? As an aside, what really, 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 really bothered me about that Bears game is that it was the first time the Patriots went with the blue tops, gray bottoms.
Yes.
And they got absolutely cooked. And now I feel like they're going to be reluctant to do it. But it was a good look. So I'm like, I don't know, man.
You know another good look was for the team? This is 2017. Do you remember the game in Tampa Bay?
I do remember the white on white. Yeah, the color rush.
Yeah, that I loved.
That was fun. It was a terrible game, but that was a good look.
Yeah, I think they won like 19-17 or something like that.
Yeah,
it
was really smoky. I remember because they fired off the cannons and the smoke never dissipated, and it was like, it was a weird game. And it was the first game where Stephon Gilmore was like Stephon Gilmore because prior to that they had the Kansas City game and he gave up that huge touchdown and they got absolutely smoked. They had the game against the Saints and it was the same thing where he just kind of fucked up on the coverage, blew an assignment wide
Brady
open.
looked amazing though, but
yeah. So that was the first game where like Gilmore looked like, oh yeah, we're all right here.
I'm trying to remember who they played week 3 that year, but I remember week 4 they lost a very close one to Carolina, and that's like that game.
Yes, I do remember that. That was the game where Malcolm Butler had that interception that he shouldn't have had because he blew the assignment, and I was like, okay, weird game, weird. That was a weird year. Yeah, I did not like 2017 as far as the Patriots football goes. I was like,
And there was the foggy game.
They played the
Texans.
Falcons. They played the Texans in week 3. That was the Brandon Cooks, the sick catch on the yeah.
That is one of my favorite catches of all. That was the Deshaun Watson coming out party too.
Yeah. That was a great game. Great game.
Yeah, I just remember Cooks caught it, and then it was amazing. But then, like we said, the other games I remember from that year was the Falcons fog game.
Yes, they had the sick camera angle because the other cameras weren't working because it was too foggy.
Yeah. And then even that year in the playoffs, like we played Tennessee and then had the nail biter against Jacksonville.
Yep.
There was the game against Pittsburgh, which I remember I was at a family Christmas and I was just, they were all like, you should not have won that game. I was just like,
the Jesse James game. Yeah.
Weird year. I'm trying to remember who, like, you know what? Since we have time to kill, but since we have time, I'm going to look this up right now. 2017 New England Patriots. And then I'll go to Wikipedia. 13-3. Believe it or not, that first year, let's see, 4 Pro Bowlers that year, and then 3 All-Pros. So not a bad season for them in that sense, but let's see. Okay, then they beat the Jets, Falcons, beat the Chargers. Oh, this is a game I remember. 2 games I remember. They went to Denver and they whooped the Broncos in Sunday Night Football.
What happened in that game?
Give me a second. I'm just going to go to it. And then the next one was the Mexico City game.
Oh, I remember that where they're oh man, that was when Obi Melifonwu had to cover Brandon Cooks and was just sucking wind. I remember that. He just got burned and it was just like he just like he couldn't get his breath and I was like, oh, poor guy.
In that game, in the Bronco game, Brady went 25 for 34 with 266 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Was that the game where Deion Lewis blocked a kick?
I think so. Let's see, who had the most touchdowns in this game? White had a touchdown. Oh, Patriots legend Dwayne Allen caught a touchdown.
Oh, you know, I'm confusing it. Deion Lewis had the 103-yard kick return that year.
That was the game against the Chargers, I want to say.
No, he had the one against Denver. That was November 12th. Because he had a return touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown.
I think you're right because they beat the Broncos 41-16 in this game.
Yeah, that is the game that I am thinking of.
Yes, and then you had the Mexico City game where they just cooked the Raiders 33-8.
They had absolutely no business in that game. And I remember everyone was like, "Oh yeah, Stephon Gilmore's going to get torched by Amari Cooper," and that just did not happen.
Like you said, what was his name again? Couldn't catch wind.
Obi Melifonwu.
Yeah,
he was just sucking air, and I'm like, "Oh, poor guy." And I liked Obi Melifonwu, but man, that was tough.
And then they beat Miami. They took care of Buffalo, which and then they went to Miami and lost. And then they finished off the year by beating the Steelers, the Bills on Christmas Eve, nonetheless, and then the New York Jets 26-6 to finish the year off.
So that was the Miami game. That was the Monday night game, And I remember, I still to this day in my
Broncos
heart,
suspended for it because he
he
trucked Tre'Davious White.
Yeah, he had dropped his elbow on him. That was the game where I still think to this day that is the reason that Brandon Cooks got traded. I think that was the game where he couldn't get off of press. He was getting pressed by Xavier Howard, and he just couldn't get open. And I remember everyone that night was just like, "Yeah, I don't think you can make it happen with Brandon Cooks. He can't be your guy." And I still really do like Brandon Cooks, but I remember that game. I was just like, "Yeah, he's just getting the shit pressed out of him, and he can't make it happen."
The Christmas Eve game, I got a fun one for you. The Mike Gillislee scored a touchdown for the New England Patriots on Christmas Eve.
Mike Gillislee, really?
Yeah.
That was the I remember thinking he was going to be so good. They gave him a 5th round pick to sign him as a restricted free agent, and then he had the 4 touchdowns against the Chiefs, or however many it was against the Chiefs, and then just did nothing the rest of the year.
Oh, and here's the fun one. The final game of the year against the Jets, Eric Lee got a safety off Bryce Petty.
That's just fun. Eric Lee was fun that year. That was the year where he picked off Tyrod Taylor in Buffalo. I remember that. Like, fresh off the practice squad. And then he had a sack. Oh, great game.
That's the thing about
Eric Lee.
That's the thing about it. There's so many, like, just random Patriots out there that it's great and it's fun to watch. Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Oh, well, anyway, you know what? I was originally going to save the chicken noodle soup bit for the end. And then I was just like, because there's that video and then the Kermit the Frog going, sheesh.
I love that. I love that video.
Oh, and if I can give an honorable mention to one, the one of Buster going, do people really lie on the internet?
Can they do that? Can you just lie on the internet? Yeah, that is another fun one. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, but anyway, I know it's the off season, but as my desk is littered with kind bar wrappers, that's not me. That's my fiance.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes. Love you. I've had to do that a couple of times throughout podcasts, just because I know you're probably in the other room waiting for me to finish. But
wrap it up.
Yes, because like I'll always get the text too where it's like, "Are you podcasting today?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am podcasting today." Because for the 228th time, I get to tell her I have been podcasting, as you have now become one of the more favorable Patriots guests that comes on, loves to shoot the shit anytime. We love to talk.
Love being on.
Yeah. If anything, maybe what we can do is down the road talk training camp and the big comes up, or even dissect the schedule when it comes out and see
that it'll be out next Thursday, right? Or the 11th, whenever the 11th is.
You know what the funny thing about schedule releases, like how they're going to do this show and dissect all the games, but we're going to know everything before it comes out.
Yep.
Like the whole thing comes out and then everyone falls for like the fake leaks and stuff like that. Like I know
every year.
Yeah. And then you'll have like the Twitter tab open, NFL schedule leaks, and then like, because that's the thing with, I remember I talked to you about, Boston hotel rooms aren't cheap. So, like, as soon as I saw, like, I think it was Karen. I can't...
Karen, her.
Yeah, her.
Yeah.
I found this on the web.
As my Apple Watch like to tell me about the NFL schedule. Thank you, Apple, for my FBI agents prying into my conversations. I remember it was her and Evan Lazar, who, by the way, did a fantastic job on draft coverage.
Always does. Evan is elite.
Yeah, and then 2 guests of this podcast have done really good draft coverage for the Patriots as well. That's Alex Barth of 98.5, and as always, Pat Lane from Pat's Nation Network. So those 2 guys, they grind the hell out of draft week. So for the guys who do that, we love you. But anyway, going back to my story, as soon as I saw Week 5 Detroit Lions, I was like, that's Canadian Thanksgiving, and I booked my room immediately. So that's the thing where I was
so it'll be the same this year.
I just got to figure out dates and everything like that. But if not this year, if not 23, definitely 24.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so one of those things is just, you got to see where life takes you and everything, because that's the other thing, folks. I have a couple more episodes to come out between now and the next couple weeks, and then I'm taking a little bit of time off because your boy's going to Florida for a wedding in about 2.5 weeks.
Super fun.
Yeah. It's always fun because I'm a groomsman who gets to stand out in the Florida heat as one of his childhood friends gets married.
Love it. Bring your sunscreen.
Oh, I will. Even though I saw a video the other day of a gator on the golf course, and I do plan on golfing down there, and it's this huge gator, and I'm just like, that's my one big fear. But excited to try Topgolf for the first time, I will say that. But anyway, McGarvin, like I said, it's been a blast getting the chat with you as always.
Real.
That's always real. And anyway, folks, for all of you guys, I'm not going to play McGarvin for the first time ever. He's going to get the outro. He's not going to get any funny crying TikTok girl, no lateral, none of that fun stuff. But anyway, guys, as always, you can find us anywhere. Patriots POV on Twitter. Nice ENT group. You know where to find me. All the info's in the link below, guys. Have a good rest of your day. And remember, folks, just because the draft's over only means football's 4 months away.
Oh, we're almost there.